Hey there, and welcome back to Truth Talk Thursday. I'm Jenny Kuemmel, host of Momma Drama Trauma, and this week's episode, Liberation and Learning to Let Go, is one of the most personal yet. April of 2024 marked 9 months since the end of my marriage, and let me tell you, this month was layered. This was the month I started quietly doing something for me. Taking real estate classes. No fanfare, no announcement, just me deciding that I was going to do something for my future, for my kids, and most of all, for myself. My husband didn't know, my kids didn't even know. I kept it quiet, held it close, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like something was finally mine. But this was the month we also kept trudging through mediation, a long, drawn-out process of detangling a life that had been built over 22 years. The paperwork, the splitting of assets, the parenting time, every conversation, every session, it all felt like pouring salt onto an open wound. It was heavy, it was draining, it was exhausting. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, I went on my first date in over 25 years. So this Truth Talk Thursday is about all of that, the liberation and the letting go, the parts of me that were starting to rise up, the ways I was learning to be okay even when I didn't feel okay, and the quiet decisions I made that started rebuilding the woman I had been missing. Let's get into it. The secret I kept just for me. I didn't tell him. I didn't tell my husband that I was taking real estate classes. I didn't tell the boys either, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't want them to slip and mention it to him. This one thing, this one decision, it was just for me. And after 22 years of sharing every decision, every plan, every move with him, this felt quietly rebellious and honestly freeing. Some people knew, my mom, my sister, probably my sister-in-laws, and of course, my friend Chrissy, who said she would mentor me. But I didn't post about it. I didn't make it a public thing. I didn't want congratulations. I didn't want anyone's opinions. I just wanted something that was mine, and I didn't want him to have access to it. Not because I was being petty, but because I was finally protecting something. Protecting my peace, protecting my possibility, protecting myself. For so long, my life had revolved around our family, our kids, our business, our schedule, our problems, and our marriage. Everything I did was somehow tied back to him. And now here I was sitting in real estate classes, holding a pen in my hand, notebook open, and it hit me. This was the first time in a long time I was doing something just for me. No one asked me to do it. No one needed me to do it. No one expected me to do it. And most importantly, no one even knew I was doing it. And that felt strange, but it also felt kind of beautiful. I was scared, no doubt, scared that maybe I was too old to start something new, scared that I wouldn't pass the tests, scared that I wouldn't be able to build a life from scratch. But underneath all that fear was something I hadn't felt in months: hope. The kind of hope that doesn't come from someone else giving you reassurance, the kind of hope that bubbles up inside you like a whisper saying, "You can do this. There's still more life for you." And there was something else too, a quiet anger. Not rage, not bitterness, but a slow, steady fire that had started to burn the day he left me when I needed him most. It was the fire of, you don't get to know what I'm doing anymore. You don't get to have a say in what I build next. You walked away from me, but I'm walking towards something new now. Looking back, I think I didn't want him to know about the classes because I didn't want him to have anything to do with this next version of me, not even as a footnote. He didn't get to say he was there for me. He didn't get to claim this chapter. He didn't get to witness it because he had walked away from the story. And now, for the first time, I wasn't trying to chase him down to stay in it. I was just writing the next chapter without him. It took until the fall for me to even tell him I had taken the classes, and by then I was already licensed, already helping with marketing, and already showing up in this whole new space of my life. And you know what? It felt so damn good to hold on to something and say, this was mine. I did this without him, without anyone. This was just the beginning of me becoming her, the woman who kept a few things to herself, the woman who chose her own path. I think that's what healing really looks like sometimes. Not some big dramatic moment, but a quiet choice to do something for yourself and not tell anyone unless you want to. That's what those real estate classes were for me. A quiet choice, a whispered declaration, a seed of liberation. The shadiness, the shifts, and the silent knowing. There's something bone deep unsettling about knowing someone so well you can predict the way they'll hurt you. That's how April felt when the mediation started to shift, not just logistically, but emotionally. Things weren't outright hostile, but they were off. Shady, subtle, strategic. The kind of strategic that makes your stomach twist and your mind say, see? You knew what was coming. And I did. There were moments when paperwork just disappeared, agreements that we had supposedly landed on suddenly had to be revisited, numbers were magically altered, dates got mixed up, there were documents that were supposed to be signed that somehow never made it back to the table, and every time it happened, it confirmed what I already knew deep down. Not just about the process, but about him. It was like watching the truth of who he was unfold in slow motion, piece by piece, just as I had suspected, just as I had feared. I remember either telling my mom or just whispering it to myself, he's going to try to play this his way. He's going to find a way to make this easier for him and harder for me. And that's exactly what it felt like. But here's the complicated part. I don't think he was trying to be cruel. I really don't. I think he just wanted what he wanted. He wanted what worked for him, and he was going to push for that regardless of how it affected me. And that was the gut punch. Not the strategy, not the disappearing paperwork, but the realization that I had spent 24 years next to someone who, when it came down to it, was going to look out for himself first. And maybe he always had. Maybe I just couldn't see it before. The mediation room became a place I dreaded, not because we were screaming at each other, because we weren't, but because of the undertones, the passive-aggressive comments, the looks across the table, the moments when we both knew exactly what was being done, but no one wanted to call it out. And yes, sometimes it did get heated. There were times I felt myself starting to boil, times I had to physically stop myself from standing up and walking out of the room. And I know he probably felt the same. Because in divorce, especially when it's been decades together, you both feel like you're getting screwed. You both feel like you've worked your whole life for something and now you're watching it get diced up on paper like it's just a checklist instead of a life. We were both fighting for what we thought was fair, what we believed we had earned, but we weren't the same people we used to be, and we weren't partners anymore. So every single piece of that process became a negotiation, not just of money or time or holidays, but of worth, of truth, and of who mattered more. It was exhausting, it was draining, and it made me realize something I didn't want to admit. I knew this version of him. I had seen it in small glimpses over the years, the excuses, the deflections, the way he could spin a story when it worked better for him. And even though I had pushed those feelings down before, told myself he wouldn't do that to me, now I was living in the middle of it, watching it play out in black and white on legal paper across the table from someone who used to be my best friend. And it hurt. It hurt in ways that's hard to explain unless you've been there, unless you've had to sit across from someone you once loved and realize you are no longer being seen as their partner, but as a problem to solve, a box to check, a name to remove from a joint account. This wasn't just mediation. This was mourning what we had, mourning who I thought he was, mourning the person I had been when I believed we were on the same team. But even in all that grief, I didn't back down because I knew what I had brought to our marriage. I knew the sacrifices I had made, the months I had held everything together while he was working out of town. I knew what I was worth, and I wasn't going to let the silence or the shadiness erase any of that. I showed up for every session, I held my ground, and I kept moving forward even when it felt like I was walking through quicksand, with every step being pulled down by a decade's worth of history. Because deep down, I knew this was the only way through. I was beginning to know who I was, and that knowledge, even with all the pain, was powerful. Dating after 25 years. What the hell was I doing? Let's talk about something I never saw coming in April of 2024. Dating again. Yep, actual dating. Not happily married, mom of three, going on a date night with her husband, not ordering takeout and falling asleep to Netflix with someone you know better than you know yourself, but dating. Like new, awkward, figuring out if I like you kind of dating. And listen, I hadn't been on a first date since I was 23 years old. And even then, I really didn't do first dates. It wasn't like I had a bunch of experience dating around. I was the kind of person who would meet someone, hit it off, and before I knew it, I was in a relationship with them. So in all reality, I'd really never had a traditional first date. Not one where I had to sit across from someone new, figure out how much to share, worry if I had something in my teeth, wonder if the silence was awkward or just quiet. It was weird, really weird. But here's the truth behind this moment. I didn't start dating because I was ready. I didn't start dating because I was healed. I started dating because I truly believed my marriage was over. We had come to terms on everything. The divorce was supposed to be finalized by the end of May. I thought, okay, this chapter is closed. The papers will be signed soon. We're done. And that belief gave me the tiniest bit of permission to imagine something different, something for me. What people don't talk about enough is the loneliness that creeps in when you've shared a life with someone for over 2 decades. You don't just grieve the person, you grieve the partnership, the habits, the routines. You grieve the way you knew how to move through the world, and stepping into something new, like dating, it's terrifying, it's vulnerable, it's strange as hell. My first date, it was a lunch/brunch date. Not fancy, not romantic, but still monumental. I still remember what I wore, how nervous I was, how I kept checking my phone just to give my hands something to do. I remember scanning the room and wondering what the hell I was doing, sitting across from someone who wasn't my husband, trying to be charming when all I wanted was to feel safe, to feel seen. And yet, in that moment, I also remember feeling super proud of myself because I had made the choice to put myself out there. I had taken a step into something unknown, uncomfortable, and unfamiliar, not for anyone else, but for me. But let me be clear. I wasn't looking for love. I wasn't looking for someone to fix me or complete me. I wasn't even looking for a second date. I was just looking for proof that I was allowed to move forward, that I was still wanted, that I was still interesting, that I was still me. I didn't come home after that first date and sit on the couch and cry. I didn't fall into some romantic high or low. I actually left feeling like I had crossed something off an emotional to-do list. Okay, first date after divorce, check. It wasn't magic, but it was movement. And in this season of my life, movement meant everything. What I didn't know at the time was that the divorce wouldn't be finalized in May after all. My husband ended up backing out of our agreement and the process would drag on. But by then, I had already taken that step forward. I had already tasted what life beyond the marriage could look like. And once you get a glimpse of that kind of freedom, that kind of possibility, it's hard to pretend you didn't. Dating, Even just that one little brunch date reminded me that I'm allowed to want more. I'm allowed to build something new. I'm allowed to hope again, even if it's scary. And it was scary. But you know what? It was also liberating. Becoming her, the woman rising from the rubble. This month wasn't just about mediation. It wasn't just about dating. It wasn't even just about divorce. April was about becoming someone new, becoming someone I didn't even recognize at first, but someone I was proud of. Because here's what they don't tell you about the middle part of divorce, the part after the shock, after the separation, after the papers start circling, but before it's really over. That's the most confusing, painful, emotionally exhausting part. It's where the grief and the growth exist side by side. It's where you cry in the car and laugh on a date. It's where you carry both heartbreak and hope in the same body. And in April, that was me. I was stepping into this new version of myself, not because I wanted to, but because life forced me to. I didn't ask for reinvention. I didn't want to burn everything down, but the fire came anyway. And instead of letting it destroy me, I started to rise from it. I was getting stronger but softer. I was setting boundaries but also learning to feel again. And I was realizing that I didn't owe anyone an explanation for how I chose to rebuild my life, especially not him. He didn't even know I had taken the real estate classes. He didn't know I passed the exam. He had no idea I was even a licensed real estate agent because I never told him. I didn't even tell my kids at first, not because I didn't trust them, but because I didn't want the information leaking back to him. I didn't want him in my business anymore. I didn't want him knowing my moves, my plans, and my wins because for the first time in a long time, my life was mine. I had spent 22 years checking in with someone else before making decisions. 22 years of shared calendars, shared plans, shared futures. I didn't owe anyone a rundown. I could take classes in secret, I could pass the exam in silence, and I could change my entire life, and I didn't have to announce it to anyone. That was a new kind of freedom. But let me be honest, even as I was becoming the stronger, more independent version of myself, I still doubted her. I still looked in the mirror and questioned if I was doing the right thing. I still had nights where I wanted to go back, not because I loved him, but because I missed feeling secure. I missed knowing what tomorrow looked like. Becoming her, this version of me, came with growing pains. It wasn't all empowerment and fresh starts. It was messy, lonely, confusing, and sometimes it felt like 2 steps forward and 1 heartbreak back. And sometimes it felt like I was pretending, like I was acting brave but crumbling inside. But the more I leaned into the discomfort, the more I started to believe in myself, the more I realized I wasn't pretending. I was brave, I was healing, I was becoming. I was no longer the woman who waited for someone else to decide her worth. I was no longer the woman who minimized her dreams so someone else's could shine. I was no longer the woman who stayed quiet just to keep the peace. And it didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen because I wanted it to. It happened because I fought for it every single day. I fought for this version of me. The cost of liberation. Let me be real about something no one ever tells you when you start to rise out of heartbreak. Liberation has a cost. Healing doesn't just mean you cry it out and wake up stronger one day. It means you lose people. It means you have to sit with truths you don't want to look at. It means you start standing taller, but some days it's only after you've been curled up on the floor, unsure of how to keep going. And April was full of those moments for me. I was learning to let go, but letting go doesn't happen in one clean moment. It's not like you wake up, feel empowered, and suddenly everything is behind you. It's daily, it's messy, It's 100 tiny heartbreaks stitched into progress. There were mornings I woke up and felt like I could conquer the world. And then there were nights I sat alone on the edge of my bed wondering what the hell just happened to my life. Because even though I was making moves, real estate classes, first dates, mediation sessions, the emotional aftermath of 24 years with someone doesn't just disappear. There were still those moments I thought about him walking through the door. There were still moments I looked around the house and felt the ghost of our old life. There were still moments I ached, not for him, but for who I used to be before all of this. The woman who believed in forever. The woman who built a family and a business. The woman who thought loyalty would protect her from betrayal. And now, that woman was gone, but she wasn't lost. She was transforming. What people didn't see behind the social media post or the laughter starting to creep back into my voice was the grief still sitting in the corners of my everyday. The tears I shed after mediation, not because I wanted him back, but because it hurt to split a life I'd worked so hard to build. The tension of looking at my kids and knowing holidays would never be the same again. The weight of dating, unsure if I was ready, unsure if I was lovable anymore, unsure if I'd ever fully trust someone again. And then the glimmers. The moment I realized I didn't miss him anymore. The moment I passed the real estate exam and knew I had done something entirely for me. The moment I looked in the mirror and saw a woman coming back to life, not perfectly, but powerfully. Liberation isn't one moment, it's hundreds of small ones. It's the first lunch date. It's the private real estate class no one knew about. It's saying no in mediation instead of backing down. It's deleting the contact. It's turning off the notifications. It's not texting back. It's waking up on a random Tuesday and realizing you didn't think about him until halfway through the day. And when you did, you didn't cry. That's liberation. But the learning to let go part, that's the hard work. That's the behind the scenes grind no one talks about. It's grieving the life you thought you'd have. It's forgiving yourself for staying too long. It's untangling your worth from someone else's inability to love you well. It's choosing not to prove anything anymore and just being who you are now. And that's where I was in April. Still heavy, still heart bruised, but stronger, clearer, and freer. Becoming her, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. And because I finally realized she was worth becoming. So if you're in the thick of it right now, if you're sitting across from someone who used to know every piece of you and now suddenly sees you as an opponent, I just want you to know you're not crazy for how heavy this feels. You're not weak for feeling shattered and exhausted, and you're not selfish for finally choosing you. This journey isn't easy. It strips you down to the bare parts of your identity and forces you to rebuild from the rubble. But the version of you that comes out on the other side, she's stronger, she's clearer, and she's finally free to become who she was always meant to be. I hope this episode gave you something to think about, whether it's how you've been silencing your own voice or how much you've minimized your own needs to just keep the peace. And if you're still navigating the mess, still trying to find clarity through the chaos, I hope you'll stick around. We're walking through this together, one truth at a time. Make sure you follow, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who needs to hear that they're not alone in this. And if this hit home for you, please let me know. DM me, comment, or send me a message. I'd love to hear your story too. As always, you are strong, you are worthy, and your story matters. Until next time, take care of you.